As the years passed, Adesuwa's leg never healed, but she found peace in her work and in the love of the villagers. Kofi grew into a young man, his gift for understanding animals making him a valued member of the community. Together, they continued to weave tapestries, each one telling a story of resilience, kindness, and the unbreakable thread that binds us all. The villagers worked together, reinforcing their huts and harvesting the crops before the storm arrived. When it finally came, it was as fierce as Kofi had warned. The winds howled, and the rains fell like arrows, but the village was ready. Thanks to Adesuwa and Kofi, no lives were lost, and the damage was minimal. After the storm, the villagers gathered to celebrate. They brought gifts to Adesuwa, yams, palm wine, and colorful beads, and thanked her for her wisdom. But Adesuwa shook her head and said, "It was not me alone. Kofi saved us all." The villagers turned to the boy, their eyes filled with gratitude and respect. For the first time, Kofi felt like he belonged. Adesuwa brought Kofi back to the village, though the journey was long and painful for her. She gave him food and water, and when he was strong enough, she began to teach him to weave. At first, Kofi was clumsy, his hands unsure, but as the days passed, he grew more confident. He told Adesuwa about his gift, the ability to understand the language of animals. She listened with wonder and encouraged him to embrace it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kofi ran to Adesuwa, his face pale with fear. "The animals are restless," he said. "They say a great storm is coming, one that will destroy the crops and flood the village." Adesuwa knew the villagers would not believe a boy, so she wove a tapestry showing the storm and its devastation. She took it to the village elders, who studied it with grave faces. "We must prepare," they said. After hours of walking, she found the boy. He was curled up in the hollow of a great iroko tree, shivering and weak. His name, she would later learn, was Kofi. His stepfather had cast him out, calling him useless because he spent his days talking to birds and animals instead of working in the fields. Kofi looked up at Adesuwa with wide, fearful eyes, but she knelt beside him and said, "You are not useless. Come with me, and I will show you your worth." The next morning, Adesuwa set out into the forest, her walking stick tapping against the roots and stones that littered the path. The villagers watched her go, murmuring among themselves, "Where is she going? What can a crippled woman do in the forest?" But Adesuwa paid them no mind. She followed the vision, guided by an unseen force. Adesuwa, who had been watching from the edge of the crowd, felt a spark of hope. She approached Eziobi and said, "I am Adesuwa, the weaver of Amafor. Will you let me try this thread?" Eziobi studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You have the hands of a creator," he said. "Take it, and may the gods guide you." That night, Adesuwa sat at her loom, the golden thread resting in her palm like a sliver of light. She wove it into a tapestry, her fingers trembling with anticipation. But when the tapestry was complete, it did not heal her leg. Instead, it showed her a vision, a young boy, no older than 10, wandering the forest alone. His clothes were torn, his feet bare, and his eyes filled with a sadness that made Adesuwa's heart ache. The tapestry seemed to whisper, "Find him, heal him." One day, a traveling merchant arrived in Amafor. He was a tall man with a voice like thunder and a beard that reached his chest. His name was Eziobi, and he carried with him a bundle of rare golden silk threads. The villagers gathered around him, marveling at the threads that shimmered like sunlight on water. Eziobi held up a single strand and said, "This thread is magical. It can mend what is broken, but only in the hands of someone pure of heart." Adesuwa lived in a small hut at the edge of the village, where the forest began its slow creep into the clearing. Her loom stood in the center of the hut, surrounded by baskets of dyed threads in every color imaginable: indigo from the river, ochre from the earth, and crimson from the bark of the osun tree. Every morning she would sit at her loom, her hands moving like the wings of a bird, weaving stories that seemed to come alive under her fingers. In the village of Amafor, nestled between the dense forests of the Niger Delta and the rolling hills that kiss the sky, there lived a woman named Adesuwa. She was known far and wide as the village weaver, a title she carried with pride and sorrow in equal measure. Adesuwa's tapestries were not just cloth, they were stories. She wove the history of our ancestors, the wisdom of the gods, and the dreams of the people into every thread. But Adesuwa herself carried a burden, a leg twisted from birth which made every step a struggle. The villagers called her Onye Nku, the crippled weaver, though never to her face. They admired her skill but pitied her condition, and their whispers followed her like shadows.